And we're going. How about that? Welcome, everyone, to Intelligent Disclosure. I'm Richard Dolan with my wife, Tracey.
Hi, everyone.
So we're happy to be back here with you. I just forgot. You just reminded me like a minute ago that we didn't do last week.
That's right. We had the power outage.
Yeah. So not the whole city of Rochester, New York, but our entire neighborhood
Quite a few
lost
people.
all power for the entire day.
Yeah.
And
right.
We were actually thinking, could we do it with our phones and broadcast like that? But I think that really it wasn't just going to work out.
No.
So, just, we missed it.
But we missed everybody. And I hope just about everyone got the notification on the community section of the YouTube channel. I didn't even know about that too long ago, but that's where we can post announcements, the community tab. But even though we did that, something happened.
One person got very worried. This happens when you're me. So people get worried. And now when you're you. So we didn't show up for the show. And the one individual did not get the notification and called the Rochester police to make sure that we were all right.
That's right. So 10:30 at night.
Get a knock on
the door. And it was the side door, which is unusual. It wasn't the front door. So Richard goes out with a bat.
You never know who you're dealing with late at night. I have a nice baseball bat that's nearby, along with other accoutrements. But I go out with the bat, and it's a police officer who just wanted to check up on our safety because one very concerned follower of ours wanted to make sure that we were okay. So, and the cop was actually a really good, cool guy. And I think he was really into all the stuff that we do. I got to chat with him a little bit.
See, I didn't know what was going on. His daughter and I were inside the house and we're listening. And then I heard YouTube. And I thought, what? YouTube? Yeah. At this point, I didn't know it was the police. We're just trying to figure out what's going on.
Right.
I never expected in a million years he would come back in the house saying that. But he did.
So thank you, concerned citizen. We appreciate that. Actually, we already got a communication to that individual.
Yeah.
And that was actually very thoughtful. Hey, look, I'd rather people cared than not cared. So there you go. That was the first intelligent disclosure we had missed since we started about a year ago.
So, yeah.
So there's a lot going on in the UFO field in terms of news, and we really want to get right to it. I just want to ask you, now we're going to talk about the New York Times piece from 2 days ago. This is very significant. This caught really both of us a bit off guard, I have to say.
It did.
And in your opinion, now this was 18 months ago was their first 2 articles that they did. And at that time, I don't really think it had a huge impact on you. Did you think it was a big deal?
No, it didn't. A couple of friends of mine had sent me messages saying, isn't this amazing? I was so excited to hear the news.
They're like, disclosure.
It's disclosure. This is so exciting. And I'll just be honest, I didn't have that feeling at all. I thought, oh, yeah, it's one article. I know.
Actually 2, but still, they did 2 articles.
2 articles, but no, sitting in the middle of academia, no way. All these people around me, this was not going to affect them. It wasn't going to budge a thing. So I didn't have that feeling at all. But I will say today is the first day that I've had that feeling. We are in the middle of a coordinated effort. I mean, we definitely, we'll go through this tonight, but so many things have been happening. And it really feels like there is some serious momentum building here. And these last few articles that have come out, and then there was a documentary released, which we'll talk about. And then Friday is the release of the show Unidentified on History Channel.
Right. I fully agree. There's a lot going on. In fact, I'm going to jump ahead to a slide that I created. I'm calling it the drip of disclosure. And here we go. Just take a look at this now. And this isn't even really complete. So we got the Tic Tac encounter from November 2004, 2007. We're told that the ATIP program is created. It supposedly closed down in 2012 due to lack of funds, right? We also know it continues to this day under different funding sources. I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. Then things really heat up in 2017. Robert Bigelow makes his statement. Remember that on 60 Minutes. Aliens are already here.
And they're all around us. Yeah.
They're all around us. Then in October of 2017, TTSA makes their, I guess you could say, intro announcement to the world. And you've got these, a lot of people love to nitpick TTSA to death. And there have been times when they've made it easy. I'm not going to deny that. But here you have a number of retired intelligence and military officials who are talking about how UFOs are being taken seriously within those circles. That's important. And they made this statement. And then that's followed up 2 months later by the New York Times, Politico, and the Washington Post. That's what we were just talking about, these first mainstream establishment media talking about the UFO subject in a way that gives it some credence. That's a watershed moment, but it didn't stop there. Now, most of the mainstream didn't really have a lot of curiosity, didn't really follow up, but George Knapp over at KLS TV absolutely did. He published I guess an analysis of, I think it was Bigelow's company, Bass, that did this analysis. I'm not sure they ever really fully nailed this down, but a very fascinating analysis of the UFO phenomenon. In June of 2018, you have Hal Puthoff's incredible, important lecture on the metamaterials and much more. I've been talking a lot about this, did my last Saturday live stream where I talked about it. January 2019, publication of those 38 papers that Puthoff was responsible for requisitioning, for getting these papers from scientists around the world on leading future scientific tech in their fields, all related to UFOs. This was released by the Defense Intelligence Agency due to a FOIA request in January. April, the Navy updates its guidelines on UAP. We talked a lot about that. That was quite significant. And then just less than 1 week ago, or about a week ago, the New York Post gets their additional confirmation from the Navy spokesperson that during the period of the ATIP program, the Navy did actively investigate UAP/UFOs. That's actually the first time that a current Pentagon spokesperson, as far as anyone can tell, made this admission, at least since the 1950s. And then May 26th, 2 days ago, you have another New York Times piece that gets into the reality of UFOs. And as a matter of fact, I think the same day, YouTube, someone, the team, the TTSA guys basically, or associated with TTSA, associated with the Nimitz, created their own YouTube page. And we're going to talk about this as well, put together a very, very polished 30-minute documentary on the Tic Tac 2004 encounter. And it's all of this is tied in together. And then you've got the History Channel with their show, is it Unidentified, I think it's called?
Yeah.
With Luis Elizondo. This is all being tied in together. There's a certain coordination here. It's not all political. Some of this seems very commercial to me, where you've got TTSA's really got their fingerprints all over this. So that's interesting.
I think, I was saying before that I have this feeling now, that feeling of excitement that we've got some momentum. When you watch the documentary, I mean, you read this article that we're just about to talk about that came out on the 26th, and then you watch the 30-minute documentary. That's what gave me the feeling, because I could really see that there's a new level of media coming out that is sophisticated. It's not sensationalized. It speaks to everyone with respect, whether you're a skeptic or a believer. Let's
go to the article here. Actually, I want to make sure. Here we go. This is what we want. So this is the New York Times piece from 2 days ago. Wow, what is that? Navy pilots report unexplained flying objects. That's quite significant. A lot of things about this article are very smart. And by the way, I corresponded just earlier today with Leslie Kane, one of the authors of this piece, and she she agreed to do an interview with me in a week or two for the Richard Dolan show. Very looking forward to that. But B, she told me that this article was the #1 trending article for the New York Times, at least yesterday, might still be for today. This was a very, very major article for the New York Times. It's gotten a tremendous amount of traction, and it appears much more so than even their first 2 articles. This is in Leslie's opinion. And actually, in my assessment, I think this is a stronger article than either of the first 2 that they published about 18 months ago. Not that they were completely problematic, but they were not as strong as this piece. So this is, even as I was saying, the title, Unexplained Flying Objects. They don't say unidentified flying objects. So they're not going to
another departure. Yeah.
UFO. They're using UFO, but they're changing it. And they do that throughout. And you can really see they're trying to be very, very ultra careful in how they are explaining everything in here. So these are the same 3 authors, Helene Cooper, Ralph Blumenthal, and Leslie Kean, as in the previous 2 major articles that they've done back in December of 2017.
I think, can I just say, I think this one's more powerful because the other one was sort of an overview announcing the program. This is a testimonial, which is very, very powerful. You're hearing firsthand accounts from pilots. So
that's right. So I think it's better information. You have confirmation of very current encounters. Even when they did the 2017 article, that was of an encounter from 2004, 13 years earlier. This article is talking about events from 3 years ago. Right? I can't get 4 years ago. My arithmetic's not that great. Still quite recent, and really talking about current encounters with incredible UFOs posing a safety hazard to the FA-18 Super Hornets. So let me get into the content of this article just a little bit. So they talk about objects being seen in 2014 and 2015. Let me stop the screen share just for a second. Almost daily for 9 months. It's an incredible thing to overlook. They start out with it and then they move right on through. Almost daily for 9 months. 9 months they're saying from the summer of 2014 until March of 2015. So that's about 9 months, roughly speaking. You're talking about 270 days.
Right. And they're seeing them every day. Yeah.
That's a lot of UFO sightings, all off the aircraft carrier, the Theodore Roosevelt. And they jump right in this article talking about the objects displaying one like a spinning top moving against the wind. But the real thing is they use the phrase hypersonic speeds multiple times in this article. In case you do not know, hypersonic is really, really, really fast. There's a range as to what qualifies as hypersonic, but roughly speaking, you're talking about 5,000 miles per hour. And that's multiple times, all right, what the FA-18 Hornet, Super Hornet can do. And that is the Navy's top fighter interceptor. So these objects are literally can do circles around the Super Hornet. The article talks about instant acceleration, stopping, maneuvering,
changing direction.
Things that would turn a human pilot into goo inside the cockpit. Of course, these are things that have been reported in the UFO research since the 1940s at the least. And we know this because, as I've been talking till I'm blue in the face, the United States, we have access through FOIA of declassified military documents describing exactly what we're talking about here. And my biggest, I guess you can say, complaint about this New York Times article, although I understand why they're doing this, but is that they're really siphoning all the history out of the UFO phenomenon. I believe they're doing this for a very specific reason, to ease the way through forward on the UFO subject. I mean, if they were to do it my way, I think it would be a little too much of a sledgehammer approach for what they're trying to do. New York Times is very, very circumspect about this.
Well, we don't know that they won't come back to some of the history of this. We're making that assumption at this point.
I am definitely making that assumption, yes.
I think it's a good assumption. But I mean, it's clear that we're in a process of opening the gates in a way that the masses can hear this.
This is what I've been saying all along, controlled disclosure, and we're seeing it here. And this is a process by which let's call it the establishment media, which the New York Times certainly is seeking to control this process of disclosure. So you've got two parts of that, the disclosure part and the control part. So they are putting out powerful information here, and they are maintaining a very tight amount of control over it. But what they're putting out is significant. Let us not lose sight of it. So I want to go over just a little more of the content for listeners, and then I've got some quotes from the article I'll show in a moment. But basically, they bring up a couple of the new pilots. One is Lieutenant Ryan Graves, another is Lieutenant Danny Acoin. They are named. There's at least 3 other pilots that are not named that the New York Times interviewed. But Graves pointed out, he says, look, any object that's going to be zooming around above us, hanging out for 12 hours and doing all the things that we've observed, he said something like, that's like 11 hours longer than it should be doing that with the amount of energy.
And fuel,
Right. He says, to do these things takes a tremendous amount of energy, and yet these things are obviously able to perform and at extended duration of time. The article does talk about a near collision with a Super Hornet pilot in late 2014. So serious that they filed an official mishap. I'm going to get a little more into that detail in just one second. They talked about videotaped, video recorded, I should say, incidents. They talked about the Go Fast video, which has already been out. We have a little thing between videotape and video record.
And filming.
Yeah, and filming.
I love to say filming.
I'm like, yeah.
We're filming right now.
Do a film? Good
he
job.
Always makes fun of me when I say it, so I like that he just did that.
One of the important things about this article is how they're dancing around the phrase extraterrestrial, and how they're really not talking, like they're bending over backwards and saying, no one in the Department of Defense is saying these objects are extraterrestrial. And then they bring in these so-called expert astrophysicists who goes out of his way to say it's not extraterrestrial, when in fact, that's screaming at you in the face that there is something incredibly unexplained about these objects that is beyond anything our civilization is supposed to have. So that's the important thing here. The other thing I guess I'll point out is that they talked about how after they upgraded their 1980s era radar to a more advanced system was when they started picking up these bogeys. Now, that led to at least one comment below. They actually had comments below this piece of someone saying, well, maybe it's the equipment. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me because, A, you're upgrading to more sophisticated, not less sophisticated equipment. And then B, they had visual sightings to go with these electronic sightings, and they had multiple types of electronic signatures on these things. They had lock-ons by the missiles themselves. They had different radars were picking this up simultaneously, and then they did finally get some amazing visuals. Mm-hmm. So very careful wording by the Navy spokesperson. I just want to point some of this out. If I've got this here, let me just show this. This is it right here. Let's save that. This is their spokesperson, Joseph Gradisher of the Navy. It's interesting statement, a little bit of weasel wording here. He says there were a number of different reports. Some cases could have been commercial drones, he said. Like, really? What commercial drones are going to be able to maneuver like these things? Well, let's move on. But in other cases...
I just want to say, I just wonder if they're just saying commercial drones. I mean, it's more likely that they would be military drones from some other nation or something like that. Maybe they're just choosing to sort of...
Maybe. Okay, let's...
downplay it, you know?
And then he says, we don't know who's doing this. We don't have enough data to track this. So the intent of the message to the fleet is to provide updated guidance on reporting procedures for suspected intrusions into our airspace. I'm like, you don't have enough data to track this? What exactly are you talking about? Do you not have enough data to know that these objects are moving at unbelievable speeds with incredible maneuverability? And what exactly do you mean by tracking anyway? It's a very unclear sort of statement in my view. So let me just show a couple of these other slides here. These are quotes from the New York Times piece that I just want to share with you. So this is a statement from the article we're talking about, Lieutenant Accoin. A few days later, Lieutenant Accoin said a training missile on his jet locked on the object and his infrared camera picked it up as well. He said, I knew I had it. I knew it was not a false hit, but still I could not pick it up visually. He couldn't see it. Couldn't see it. Now, again, you could say, is this due to their equipment malfunctioning? Well, if it is, let's see some analysis of how these different types of systems, both his, the jet his missile that locked onto the object and his infrared camera picking it up, that's different from the radar systems anyway. But then the article points out, then the pilots began seeing the objects. In late 2014, Lieutenant Graves said he was back at base in Virginia Beach. Yeah, all of this is off the East Coast of the United States. When he encountered a squadron mate just back from a mission with a look of shock on his face. He said he was stunned to hear the pilot's words. I almost hit one of those things, the pilot told Lieutenant Graves. The pilot and his wingmen were flying in tandem about 100 feet apart over the Atlantic Ocean east of Virginia Beach when something flew between them. I would like you guys to visualize this. All right, there you got two FA-18 Super Hornet fighter jets flying in tandem 100 feet apart. It's very close. And something zooms between them. The article doesn't say, was it coming at them or from behind? I get the idea it was from behind, but I could be wrong. In any case, this thing zooms right past them, between them, right past the cockpit. According to the witness, it looked like a sphere encasing a cube. And again, think of that visually. So that's an unusual thing to see, a sphere, and inside that sphere, a cube. And it spooked the squadron so much that an aviation flight safety report was filed. Yeah, do you want to say something?
Yeah, I asked you this last night, but I'm going to ask you this now on the show. Have you ever heard of any object reported like this?
A UFO described like that? I'm not really sure that I have, no.
Or anything in the realm of that?
Yes, things in the realm of that. So there have definitely been many, many objects described as perfectly spherical, zooming through the air. So that, absolutely. And some very, very good sightings, I would say. So this is fundamentally a spherical object, but what's interesting here is that it's transparent enough.
Well,
apparently.
It's implying transparency, yeah.
Right, that the witness believed he saw something cube-shaped inside it. Now, the thing we have to keep in mind is this is all happening at a very fast speed. I would have to think.
Right.
They didn't give an indication as to how fast this object was, but I'm guessing it was pretty fast. So, you take that as a possible, maybe not as a definite, but nonetheless, we have to assume you got a decent enough look at it that there you go.
Obviously, it was up close. It was fast, but it was up close.
Right.
If it was between them.
Yeah. And then, I want to show couple of other things about this article here. Let me just share this screen again. What was strange, the pilots said, was that the video showed objects accelerating to hypersonic speed. Now, they don't really describe which video here they are talking about in this article, as far as I could tell. But they're certainly implying that there was a lot of video that was shot of these objects. After all, every day for 3/4 of a year, you have to assume. So they have video of these things making sudden stops and instantaneous turns. That's the article here. And I read this one already. And then, of course, they trot out. This is the, almost required statement. In fact, for the New York Times, I have been told multiple times that it is New York Times policy that they must include skeptical statements on any of these UFO articles, and I'm sure including this one. So they trot out this. I mean, look, no offense to this man, Leon Golub, but this is a ridiculous statement he makes. I'm just going to read the statement out of the article. Leon Golub, a senior astrophysicist at the Harvard Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics, said the possibility of an extraterrestrial cause, quote, is so unlikely that it competes with many other low probability but more mundane explanations. He added that there are so many other possibilities. Bugs in the code for the imaging and display systems. Like, how is he an expert on this? He's an astrophysicist. I would just like to know. Yeah. Then he talks about something he would be expected to know about: atmospheric effects and reflections. Okay, fine. And then he gets into becoming a psychologist. Neurological overload from multiple inputs during high-speed flight. I seriously would like to know his qualifications for going there and describing, how he gets his analysis in that way. Just, but I really have to think, like, anyone reading this article with a reasonable amount of intelligence is going to look at that quote and just think that's ridiculous. Mm-hmm. And in my opinion, I think it's becoming harder and harder for these hidebound skeptics to maintain their position. There's too much. Like, this information it's becoming more and more difficult, I think, simply to dismiss this with a wave of a hand. And I'll simply point out that the comments below this article, there were almost 400 when I last looked at it. Now, it's the New York Times, so you expect a lot of skeptical comments, and there were, but even the skeptical comments were very cautious. They were very carefully worded, and they were not particularly persuasive. And I think they were very much outnumbered by the pro-UFO comments below this piece. Say what you will about the New York Times. There's a lot of things that you should never, ever trust about that newspaper, but the comments that they have are generally very well written compared with a lot of other publications. And the pro-UFO comments that they had were, I would say, very strong and very well presented. So the fact that the New York Times has this discussion going on below its #1 article for at least this part of the week should tell us something.
So you're basically saying what you're seeing is a more sophisticated discussion on both sides?
I think so.
So even from the skeptics. So maybe that's sort of one of the significant things about this article. I'll just say, even for the people who like that astrophysicist, I really believe once this is coupled with what has come out, the Nimitz Encounters documentary, and Unidentified.
Yeah, I'm going to show you a screenshot.
We are going to be having this type of discussion more often. I think people won't be able to have those knee-jerk skeptical reactions anymore. It's really elevating the discussion, Yeah,
I agree. This image is of Unidentified. By the way, this got a plug in the New York Times article. So that's a big red flag right there. Okay, boom. You know that there's clear collaboration going on between the New York Times and the History Channel. synergy, as I'm calling it here.
But is that such a bad thing?
No,
in this case,
look, it's a commercial. There's a commercial element to this. It's very obvious. But I've been saying all along, like I agree with you, what you're, I think, implying here. The content is what rules. It's all about the content. People can complain all they want about motivations. Well, they're ex-CIA, would never trust them. Well, it's the History Channel tie-in. It's for profit. It's TTSA. They're out to make money. Say what you want to say, all right? And you can complain all you want about people's motivations and how dare they try to make money. The point is, let's focus on what they're saying. And if what they are saying can advance this discussion, then I think we're obligated to listen to what they're saying and to try to work that through and decide what we think about it. But yeah, they did this tie-in with the TV show. So clear, and everything that's come out in the last, almost everything in the last year or so has been, you could trace almost all of it to TTSA. You know, like the Navy UAP guidelines, that article is all TTSA all over that. They had Chris Mellon and Luis Elizondo quoted there. And I'm not even saying this is bad. Like if they're promoting this subject to get out there in a reasonably sophisticated way, then good. Like I think we would want that.
Yeah,
it's my opinion.
Definitely.
So, all right. So that's, maybe will leave the New York Times piece for now. I will want to revisit this. I'm going to almost certainly, Leslie Kane agreed to at least do an interview in a couple of weeks. I think that'll be great. A lot of questions I will want to ask her. I don't know how many she'll be able to answer. We'll have to see. But I think that she'll probably provide a fair amount of information. She's doing talks for lots of media right now. I'm sure she is. She's out there all over the place. So by the time she gets to me, she'll have talked herself out. Now, do we want to get into,
I don't know about that because I think she's probably, it'll probably be exhausting, but she'll probably be excited too, because I think all of us will start to feel this ball really moving, you know?
Well, I think she'll have a better interview with me than she's going to with a lot of the major media for sure. I just want to show, this is just some of the recent articles in other media that I came across just today. So they're following up on the New York Times piece, and some of them are very serious. Some of them, like Rolling Stone, is another sign of the apocalypse. Yeah, thanks, Rolling Stone. There's a few of those types of pieces where they're kind of rolling their eyes, but others that are definitely taking this more seriously. Do you want to jump into, there's that, this thing?
Yeah, let's talk about the Nimitz Encounters. So there's a YouTube channel if you want to look it up, and you can go and watch this. And it is 30, I think it's about 32 minutes long.
Yeah.
It is exceptional. It's like I was saying, it really, you watch this, it's not sensationalized. You are actually watching witness testimony, but you're walking through the whole story.
So going back to 2004, the original encounter that hit the New York Times 18 months ago, the November 2004 incident off the coast of San Diego, the USS Nimitz, and also involving the Princeton, but really the Nimitz and their FA-18A Super Hornet pilots who encountered the Tic Tac UFO. A lot more detail has come out in this particular documentary. And we're trying to figure out like who exactly. So it's called the Nimitz Encounters YouTube channel. And these guys are clearly creating a very high level production. Is this part of the History Channel thing? I wonder.
The cinematography is exquisite, and
they do graphic recreations of the encounter that are very, very excellent. So I don't know. Are we going to see this in a History Channel documentary? Is this like a 30-minute preview of?
I'm not sure
what you see in the series that's going to air this Friday.
I really don't know, but I feel pretty positive this is a taste for all of us of what will come in, the sort of the flavor of what's going to happen, or the quality of what we're going to see on Friday with that new 6-part series.
This is what we've been led to believe, that the series coming out is actually going to be leaps and bounds beyond what has appeared before. We'll see. But definitely a number of people have said this to us,
Mm-hmm.
that it's of an exceptionally high quality. But what you're saying is this YouTube video by the Nimitz Encounters channel it's really exceptionally done.
Right.
I totally agree. I'm going to share a couple of screenshots. Can I do that?
Yeah, sure. I definitely encourage everyone to check it out, and so you can see what we're talking about here, because you have the testimony of.
So here's the YouTube channels right there. The Nimitz
That's right.
Encounters.
4 professional military personnel going through this story, and I don't want to tell the whole story, but basically you've got personnel who are engaged in flight. Here's
Kevin Day. He just did an interview not long ago with Alejandro Rojas, a really excellent interview, by the way. Good job, Alejandro. And he's featured in this quite a bit. He was as it says here, the anti-air warfare coordinator on the Princeton at the time. Extremely articulate man.
Yeah, he was responsible for the safety of basically the Super Hornets,
right,
leaving the Nimitz and identifying the craft, all the craft in the area.
One of the things he said actually in his interview with Alejandro and on this documentary was, he was tracking the speeds and maneuverability of these multiple objects. It wasn't just one Tic Tac UFO. And he said at one point the object dropped 28,000 feet in 0.78
That's right.
seconds. I think it was 0.78.
It was, yeah.
You do a rough calculation of that. That's more than 24,000 miles per hour. All right.
Yeah.
So that's, so by comparison, if the F-18s are doing Mach 2, you're talking, roughly 1,500 miles per hour, give or take. This is 15 times that speed. And it just instant acceleration and drops. And they also, in this documentary, confirmed that the Tic Tac UFO was tracked below the surface of the water, and they got confirmation from their sonar technician experts. So there's a lot of new information about the Tic Tac encounter that came out, and this was released the exact same day as the New York Times piece. That's May 26th.
That's right.
There's another gentleman who's interviewed extensively. This is Petty Officer Gary Voorhees. Again, very articulate, very upfront. These guys, you can just tell by looking at them. They know their business. They know their stuff. Very, very capable at what they're doing. Any other screens?
At one point, they were talking about multiple UAPs dropping at that speed, a whole series of them.
Right, exactly.
This was part of the thing that they were seeing on their radar. They were showing up they were just showing up on the screen in groups of 5 to 10, multiple times. And they were flying in super close formation. So no other craft does anything like that.
No, with the kind of maneuverability. This is a recreation they have of the two lead. This is where Fravors encounter happens. And I think that's the representation of the object down at the surface of the water.
It is.
And this is a recreation of the object as you kind of see it at an angle.
The Tic Tac over top of the disturbance in the water. I think there's another image after this one.
Well, I'm not sure if I included it here.
Oh,
so
okay.
No, I see it. I want to get to that in a minute. Well, actually, I could talk about this here, the confiscation of the data. Do you want to get into that at all? Or?
You go ahead.
Well, this is very significant. One of the important points that was made by one of the other individuals.
There's Patrick Hughes.
Thank you. Yeah,
I was trying to remember tech.
So he talked about how all of the data of these encounters were confiscated by individuals that no one knew who their identity was. In fact, he didn't even know how they got on the ship.
Right.
They take what was called the brick. This is the recording data that stores all of the information from each flight.
Mm-hmm.
And all of the pilots were told, you're not supposed to talk about this.
That's right. They were asked to sign non-disclosure agreements right away.
Really makes you wonder how this all got out.
Well, yeah, that's what I was saying.
That's a story that we really need to explore.
Yeah, they're all saying they had to sign these, yet here they are in this documentary disclosing all this information. So, yeah, how did this happen is the logical question.
But I mean, exactly. The key thing here, though, is the information was confiscated. This is 2004, 3 years before ATIP was created. So let me just ask a question here. If there was no UFO investigative organization going on at this time, why the hell are they going to care and take this data and basically go all cloak and dagger on their own seamen about this? Clearly, there were protocols in place, well in place, to manage this information 100% and not let anything get out that's not supposed to get out. So they clearly had protocols.
Right. And another sign of that is that they showed up immediately.
Yeah.
There was no delay in them showing up to confiscate this.
So when you hear like folks at ATIP connected with ATIP and the TTSA people saying, well, we don't know what these things are. Again, it's not that I do understand where they're coming from, right? But you've got to understand this is purely for public consumption. Those types of statements. We don't know what they are. Are they Russian? Are they Chinese? Baloney. They've had very clear procedures in place since forever to deal with these UFO encounters and look, keep in mind, November of 2004 is just 3 years after 9/11 and just about a year and a half after the war on terror, excuse me, I keep getting that ever since Borat, the war on terror that the United States was engaging in at that time. The U.S. was on a major war footing. All right. And, this isn't fun and games here. They're out off the coast of Southern California doing very serious training exercises. And these objects are there. And this is what comes up in the most recent New York Times piece, which is, they're doing training missions in preparation for going into the Persian Gulf in 2015.
That's right.
And they're up there at 30,000 feet. They're not supposed to be encountering anything out there. This is dangerous. To go back to that New York Times piece for a moment, the original assumption, at least we're told, is that they thought, well, maybe, we've got some classified drone project or someone's doing something. But then when the object zoomed right by those aircraft, their attitude was actually one of anger. They're like, who the hell is flying these things so close to us? You can cause an accident and kill people.
Well, yeah, that's actually how they concluded that it was not anyone's classified drone project.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. So
that it had to be something else.
I mean, I was, we could speculate maybe the Russians or the Chinese are testing some revolutionary new craft to give the Americans a little tap on the shoulder, which I think would be very unlikely, but maybe not impossible. But I just think it would be unlikely.
I think it would be unlikely as well, because a little tap on the shoulder, meaning you're going to fly your super incredible, amazingly expensive technology between two Super Hornets. You're going to risk all that money just showing off and doing a maneuver like that to give them a tap on the shoulder.
Well,
I just don't see that,
To make a point. I mean,
well, that would make a point.
You would say
risky,
America,
expensive point.
Back off, that type of a thing. That would be the idea. I'm not saying that's the case. I don't really believe it's the case. But when you're trying to think of all these different possibilities.
Yeah.
But again, the thing that these revelations, this controlled disclosure is doing, I'm seeing the form of this more and more now. It's a disclosure without the history. That's really what's happening. So it's like a reboot of the UFO subject, courtesy of organizations like the New York Times and all the other major media. It's like the 1940s, 1950s, 1960s, 70s, and 80s never happened. And so now we're dealing with this new phenomenon, these UAP. What are they? We don't know what they are. My belief is that it's only going to succeed for so long. When you start the drip of disclosure and it gets to be of enough significant mass, I don't really think it's going to be possible to hide the fact that if this is real, then what are we going to say about all those rumors of crash retrievals, which, by the way, are already out courtesy of important lectures like by Hal Puthoff from last June at the SSE in June of 2018. Talked about this. Or people will start asking about alien encounters.
Yeah.
Of course they're going to. There's a lot of people out there who have had them, or at least who've claimed that they've had them. And it may not be as much of a stretch for that once the government admits that we don't really know who's behind these UAP.
Right.
Which they're this close to admitting it right now.
Right. Well, look, we needed a way to open the door to the masses, and nothing was working before. So we have to be grateful for that. Now the discussion is becoming a major discussion.
Yeah, I've been really coming to the conclusion that this just may be the only way they can do it.
That's what I think, for sure.
When you've got, we labor under this. What's that?
I said, I think a lot of people do.
When we labor under the assumption that, oh yes, we have this open democratic system, it's harder for things to make sense because you're laboring under a false assumption. We call our system a democracy, but it's anything but. It's a very tightly controlled hierarchy. Always has been. So in that type of a system, when you have a very tightly controlled amount of information by a small group of people, and they form the conclusion that it's now time, because it's inevitable that some of this has to come out, they're going to control that process. And they're going to do every single thing they can to make sure they maintain control over that process.
Yeah, I agree.
Now, there's pros and cons to this, and I'm not even necessarily saying it's all bad. Some people are. I'm just saying, just be aware that this is what's happening. My number one concern is that in the process of disclosing greater and greater information about these UAP, they're going to siphon so much of the history out that they'll basically give us a very, very partial version of what is actually happening. And we're going to be right back at square one, needing to break through the next veil of secrecy. And I don't want that to happen. I think we need to get this whole thing out as soon as possible. My hope, best scenario, is that this controlled disclosure is stage one of what may be a multi-stage disclosure process.
I don't know what you guys think, but I definitely think it's going to be something like that.
So this is my last slide that I put together here. We can keep talking after this. I just call it Something is Happening. Major confirmations have taken place over the past 18 months. I showed the timeline, and that's just only some of the bigger things that have happened. It's worth asking, and I don't think anyone can answer this yet. How much of all of this is coordinated, and how high is that coordination? In other words, is this being controlled by some theoretical MJ-12 group, or is this being pushed by some very engaged people from the classified world with a few allies, and they're just making it happen? It's a reasonable question to ask. My sense is it's actually a little bit of both. I think there are always motivated people within the system who want to push this forward. And I'm of the opinion that the people at TTSA are those types of people. But
definitely,
they're doing what they're doing because they're being permitted to do this.
Of course.
And so the question that we want to ask is, who's giving the permission, and how far is this all going to go? That's really what we want to ask.
Question.
So something for us to be reflecting on. So check this out. We've only been doing this for 50 minutes, 49 minutes.
I think this is a record.
Yeah, this is pretty good. We wanted to be efficient with this tonight, and I think that we're succeeding. I don't know what else we really need to say about this right now. I think we're in the midst of a lot of new revelations happening, and I really want to see the fallout of this and where, if there are additional shockwaves that follow up on this, and what, if anything, is going to be next. I think there will be things coming up, by the way. Personal intuition.
I do as well.
Yeah.
Well, even next week, I'll be interested to see what's happened, once a lot of you watch the documentary that's out there, and then we have the first episode of Unidentified. Right. Again, we haven't seen it yet, but we've heard from people that this is better in so many ways than anything that's out there or has been out there in the field. So we're just as curious as you are. But I think if it lives up to the reviews, we are definitely going to see dialogue with different people in our lives. I was already seeing that today. I'm
looking forward to this being a good show.
Yeah.
I've got high hopes, and we haven't seen any of it. Some people have seen screeners. We haven't. So, and what's up with that, guys? Come on. But actually, I'm looking forward to seeing it. I have a feeling this is not going to disappoint, but we'll have to just wait. Yeah. And it will appear we're going to be away at the festivities in
Indian Wells,
known as Contact in the Desert.
Maybe we'll see some of you there.
That'll be interesting, to say the very least. So we'll be there. And if you're at Contact in the Desert, do find us. We'll be running around, and we'll have a table there. And
that's right.
I'll be giving a variety of lectures there. Two of which will actually deal with these themes that we're talking about tonight. So I'll be talking quite a lot about this.
You're also doing a Project Blue Book panel, I think.
Oh yeah, that'll be I think that's with Jacques Vallée, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, good. And Paul Hynek.
That's right.
So yeah, that'll be fun. I'll look forward to that. So that's that whole crazy weekend, and it will be emphasis on crazy, but we'll be back. We'll be back in time to do an intelligent disclosure next Tuesday. And unless some other major bombshell hits, we've already got that one lined up. So we'll fly home from a red eye, be a little tired. But we're going to jump into an ID for Tuesday at 8 o'clock Eastern time. So we'll have that ready. It'll be a surprise as to what it's about.
Yep.
So,
yeah. Well,
all right. Anything else we want to get?
No, I just, as I was saying at the beginning, I don't know. I feel this is going to be the start of vindication for a lot of people. That's what people said to me back in 2017. I didn't feel that way. I wasn't there. But I feel like this is what we're going to start to see, and we're going to start to feel. I could be wrong, but I'm looking forward to seeing how this unfolds.
Hardcore skeptics are going to have a harder and harder time with this. They're going to be put into a smaller and smaller little corner. And look, you can stick your head in the sand only for so long until you really start looking foolish. So recognize that it's not about an ideology. Recognize that we go where the evidence leads us, and it's about the truth. It's not about saving our reputations. It's not about maintaining a position that you've held for 30 years. It's not about that. People can always change based on where the new evidence leads you. It is a shame that Stanton Friedman isn't alive to see where this is all heading. He was able to see the general direction, but this is a big event, and I firmly believe there's going to be more events of this magnitude to come, and maybe even this year.
The New York Times covered Stanton's obituary.
They did, yes, and they were respectful about it, I believe. So that's good to see.
And I mean, that's significant. All these things coming out in the New York Times is huge.
Yeah, look, I still will never trust the New York Times. I think that they're a very, very controlled mouthpiece for the establishment. Having said that, when they do a 180 on a subject that they have snarkily debunked for 70 years, you've got to take notice and ask yourself, what's going on here? So something important is happening. So pay attention. That's what it means. Pay attention and let's see where all of this goes. So I guess that's it. Guess we should thank all of you guys for being here.
Yes, thank you so much. I'm sorry we didn't get to see the chat, but we are so happy that you're all here joining us.
Absolutely. So until next week, I want to say keep rocking in the free world. Can I say that? That's a little obsolete, but hey, let's do it.
Go for it.
All right. Seriously, thanks to everyone for supporting us in any way that you do. If you like what you see here, subscribe to our channel. That always helps us. You can like the video, also helps us. If you're really interested in what we're doing on a regular basis, go to our website, richarddolanmembers.com. It's all happening there. We're putting up content multiple times every week, and we're keeping it very interesting indeed. One of the things that we do that I think no one else does are off the cuffs.
Yeah.
And just for the record, like I'll stomp around the house raving and ranting about everything, and Tracey just happens to have recording devices available. So
because
if you want to hear me,
phones, of course.
If you want to hear me really uncut, then you can do that multiple times a week with my off the cuffs. That's like her idea.
That's right.
That was a good one.
I just stop him in his tracks, hit record, and continue.
Oh my God.
And
that's
where we go. So
the other thing I do for that site is I basically do a weekly kind of private video cast. So I call it the weekly wrap, and that really
I call it the
summarizes
fireside chat.
Fireside chat. I do that every week for members of the site, and I just talk about what's on my mind. I'll review what was important for the week, but also really just kind of cut loose a little bit. So that's a lot of the information that we have on our website, and then other interviews and things.
Yeah, we'll have the behind the scenes interviews.
Yeah,
different guest appearances, these types of things. And in addition to that, we have a free newsletter, not to be confused with the member site.
Right.
And the newsletter comes out every week. It is completely separate. But if you've ever been thinking about being a member, the free newsletter gives you a weekly preview of all the free content we release. And then underneath is all the members' content we release.
So it's all like a nice little magazine.
Yeah, you can check it out. We also have all of our upcoming events for the year. So we have that all chronicled with all the links.
That's it?
Yeah, that's it.
All
and
right.
you can sign up for that either on richarddolanmembers.com. It's right in the middle of the screen. And again, that is not to be a member. That is just for the newsletter.
Or you can go to Richard Dolan Press, and it's there as well.
That's right.
Just sign up for the newsletter.
Anyhow, we want to thank you again. We want to thank Pursuing X. And we're just so grateful that you're here with us. And maybe we've got something exciting going. We'll see.
All right. Until next time. Catch you later.
Good night, everyone.